They don't hate anyone, and yet, one day, they simply stop replying. Here's what's really going on in the minds of intelligent people before they quietly drift away from everyone. It's never sudden. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to cut ties with their entire circle. It always starts with something tiny, a message that takes 3 days to open, an invitation turned down for no clear reason, a conversation cut short when it once could have gone on for hours. And then that small thing repeats over and over until it becomes a new way of being. From the outside, everyone talks about distance, coldness, sometimes even arrogance. But on the inside, something far more interesting is happening. Something psychology has observed for a long time, even though most people never notice it in themselves. The first trigger is the end of a certain kind of social innocence. For years, you take people at their word. You believe the smile, you believe the compliment, you believe the promise to stay in touch. Then, gradually, something shifts in how you perceive others. It's not that you become suspicious by nature, it's that your brain starts connecting dots it never used to notice. The coworker who only remembers you when they need a favor. The friend who disappears the moment things go well for you, but reappears the second things go wrong. The person who keeps saying they support you, but has never actually shown it. Once these patterns become visible, they never become invisible again. And that's exactly where the distance begins, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You don't stop loving people, you simply stop lying to yourself about what they actually mean in your life. This new clarity also changes your relationship with time. Every hour starts to feel precious, and you no longer see the point of spending it on connections that never give anything genuine back. The second trigger is even more subtle. It has to do with the mental fatigue caused by constant analysis. Some people don't just hear words, they pick up on the intentions behind them. A casual sentence becomes a clue, a silence becomes information, a shift in tone becomes a warning sign. This level of attention is exhausting because it never really switches off, even in moments that should feel light. An evening with friends, once a source of pure enjoyment, turns into a non-stop mental exercise of decoding rather than actually enjoying the moment. And the more you analyze every interaction, the more certain relationships simply lose their flavor. It's not that these people look down on others. It's that they can no longer find satisfaction in the same shallow conversations repeated endlessly. They'd rather have one honest exchange than 10 polite conversations that go nowhere. The third trigger has to do with how you come to interpret human behavior in general. There's a simple idea, rarely put into practice, that most people's reactions aren't really about you, they're about themselves. The person who criticizes constantly might be carrying a frustration they've never dealt with. The one who always interrupts might not have the confidence to actually listen. The one who constantly demands attention might, more than anything, be afraid of being forgotten. Understanding this completely changes how you experience conflict. You stop taking things personally. You stop trying to fix people who never asked to be fixed. And you start protecting your own mental space the way you'd protect any precious, limited resource. This isn't indifference. It's simply refusing to keep spending your energy on battles nobody actually wants to win. It isn't arrogance either. It's just the natural consequence of finally understanding the difference between real presence and mere habit. The fourth trigger is probably the most misunderstood of all, the choice of solitude. Many assume that stepping back from the world means running away from people. In reality, it's often the opposite. It's not solitude itself people are chasing. It's the clarity it brings. For the first time, silence stops feeling empty. It becomes a space where you can finally hear your own thoughts without the constant noise of other people's expectations. It's in that silence that the most honest self-reflection happens, the kind you carefully avoid when you're constantly surrounded. This time alone isn't an escape, it's a rebuild. You read more, you think more deeply, you question beliefs you'd accepted without ever examining them, and little by little, You stop needing approval from people who, deep down, never really understood you in the first place. You discover you can feel more accompanied alone with your own thoughts than lost in a crowd that doesn't really see you. You even start appreciating simple things again. A quiet walk, reading without a single notification, a morning with no social obligation, as if your mind finally had room to breathe. The fifth trigger explains why this shift ends up transforming absolutely every relationship a person has. This process never happens all at once. It happens one realization at a time. One day, you stop arguing with people who've already decided not to understand you. Another day, you stop chasing friendships that only survive when they're convenient for someone else. Then, without ever announcing it, you start building a life that no longer depends on constant approval from others. From the outside, it looks like a sudden disappearance. But on the inside, that decision had been building for months, sometimes years. And this is exactly where most people get it wrong. They assume this distance comes from a sense of superiority, when really it comes from a more conscious choice about where to invest your time, energy, and attention. What looks like disappearing is often, in reality, just sorting, keeping what truly matters, and letting go of everything that was only noise. And ironically, it's often the people left at a distance who, months later, come back on their own, with more respect and fewer expectations, as if the absence had put everything back in its rightful place. There's one last detail almost nobody notices. This shift never really stops. Once you've tasted more authentic relationships, it becomes almost impossible to go back. To smile politely through exchanges you already know are empty. You become more selective, not out of snobbery, but because you now know the difference between being surrounded and being understood. And that selectiveness, however uncomfortable it may be for the people left behind, always ends up attracting the right people, the ones who don't need to be analyzed to be appreciated. So if you've recently found yourself pulling away from certain people, don't ask whether you're becoming antisocial. Ask yourself something far more important instead. Are you running away from people, or are you finally walking toward the life that's truly meant for you? Sometimes the people who seem to disappear aren't losing themselves at all. They're simply finding themselves. And you. Have you ever pulled away from someone without really knowing why at the time? Or have you ever watched someone drift away from you like that? Tell me in the comments. I'd genuinely love to read your thoughts.